but it does feel different. The Commanders felt fraudulent all year, riding the high of Jaden Daniels and what he was able to do there. This doesn't feel like that with this team. Would you agree? It feels a little bit more like there's something happening here.
I would agree with that, because last year there were a lot of those close games for the Commanders where they were close. Even watching them sometimes, I felt like Jaden Daniels and Terry McLaurin were really carrying things, and the defense would make plays at times. But I do think, I just think this is a better coach team. I don't think anybody would argue that Dan Campbell is a better coach than Mike Vrabel. I know for a fact that I hope that no one would say that Cliff Kingsbury is a better coach than Josh McDaniels. And that's where, when I wrote the whole thing about why I thought they should win 10 games, was because of that trifecta. And I said the Texans did it a couple years ago. The Commanders did it last season. I just didn't see what the Patriots were missing, that people were just like, hey, let's pump the brakes on 10 games when they're playing a bad schedule. That's even worse. Obviously, I think it's worse than a lot of people thought it was. But it just felt like they had brought in enough players to steady things out. Obviously, there were some things that you needed to bank on, like Stefon Diggs coming back, some of the young guys like Will Campbell working out, Jared Wilson working out. There were definitely a lot of unknowns, and I could still, I will admit that maybe that was a very optimistic view, but it was really the top guys. And we talk about it, the top down, that's where NFL teams have success. You have a former coach of the year. You have maybe the best play caller and offensive coordinator in football. In football history. In football history, we could say, in Drake Maye, with what he showed last year, it blew my mind that people didn't think that he and Josh McDaniels would set this league on fire as long as they had enough decent pieces like what they have now, where I don't know that all these guys would have the success they're having on other teams. But with Drake Maye, who's going to throw you open, who's going to give you some prime opportunities, and Josh McDaniels putting guys in positions to succeed where Drake has multiple answers on most plays, it felt like that was the recipe for success, and now they're outperforming that. So, I don't think this is like the Commanders. I think this is a team where, the Commanders were still, people were talking about them being in the Super Bowl, but obviously the AFC is a lot tougher, so I think that plays a factor, where with the Commanders, it's basically like if you beat the Eagles, you can get there. But, even in a tough AFC, this feels like a team that could beat anybody depending on the Sunday.
I will say the pessimist that lives deep down in me still sits here sometimes and is just like, when is this going to fall apart? Are they going to?
That's the anxious boy in me, so I get that.
Are they going to lose 3 in a row here? Is the injury bug going to finally hit them? And I look at the Commanders of last year. I look at those Texans from a few years back, where the young quarterback shines. Everyone thinks this is the next best team, the next best thing. And I guess I'm trying to figure out the difference between the Patriots and them, and I don't quite see it yet. But I also don't necessarily know what tanked those. The Commanders this year is obviously, I would say, the injury to Jaden Daniels. The roster around him, I guess, isn't as good as it was last year. I have to dig a little bit more into that. But even with the Mike Vrabel teams in Tennessee, where Vrabel has been awesome right now. I'm not taking anything away from him. But I don't know if it became stale in Tennessee. I don't know if it was strictly him and
Ryan Tannehill.
And that's where I keep coming back to, is the Drake Maye angle to that too, where Vrabel had those guys bought in Tennessee, and it's like they just couldn't get over that hump. They were 9-7, 10-6, or the 10-6 area of the AFC playoff picture. They got over the hump one year to the AFC Championship game, and then just couldn't get it done.
And they traded A.J. Brown and couldn't get it done.
And so there was a lot around Mike Vrabel, and I don't think it was necessarily his fault down there. But I'm just essentially, I hope, and I hope and pray sounds a little far, but it's like, I hope that this doesn't happen to this team, because it's been so excited to cover them and see what's going on. And I hope they don't turn into the Commanders and the Texans. But even if they do, the Commanders and the Texans are still, relatively competitive teams are now. I just think that there is a little bit of a next level to the Patriots than there is with those guys.